Welcome. I'll let everybody kind of start trickling in as we just had a break. But we are here today. This is the Farm to Table Chef Panel that we are doing as part of the virtual tour. We have here an amazing panel of chefs. Following Joan's talk, I know Joan was making some points about the health benefits of cooking your own meals, and I know Tammy was mentioning also just that I think the key thing to factor in there too is also just being aware of where you're going to eat and making sure that it's a quality restaurant and they're using quality ingredients. And I think that the panel that we have here really encapsulates that that this really is a top-notch crowd that I will introduce you to. But first, I just wanted to say, I mean, as Andy has mentioned, and Tammy and Katie, I know have brought up before in some of the other sessions, with canned foods, we do have a little bit of an inferiority complex, and I think that we get defensive that people will talk badly about canned foods, and they think that the answer is always that fresh is always best. And as we've talked about over the last few days, that's not always the case. Specifically, talking about seasonality and the health benefits and things like that. But when I tell people that, it's obviously, it feels biased, and I'm also not a great cook. And so that's why I get really excited when we have the opportunity to have these really great, world recognized chefs, James Beard award winning, Michelin recognized, highly, not notorious, but infamous? No. Well respected chefs that can come on board and talk to you about canned food. And especially, I mean, this lineup too really represents some of the cream of the crop of the farm to fork movement as well. And they're known for using the best ingredients. And so I want to have each of them introduce themselves. And so guys, I'll call on you, and if you could just give me kind of a 1-minute bio about yourself and your experiences in kitchens and restaurants, but then also the poll question that we had going into this for our viewers is how many types of canned food products do you think that our chef panelists use in the restaurants that they work in? So if you could just give us kind of a ballpark. I think the multiple choice was like from 1 to 3, 4 to 6, or 6 or more. But if in the kitchens that you've worked in, if you could kind of then just give us a ballpark of how many canned foods you've used. So Brad, I'll start with you. If you could introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Brad Cecchi. I'm the chef and owner of Canon restaurant here in Sacramento. Also one of the 3 founders of Family Meal Sacramento, a philanthropic feeding program that we started here during the pandemic. Yeah, happy to be here. We use, I think canned food wise, we're probably between the 4 to 6 ingredient level. With kind of the seasonality of the restaurant, we tend to use a lot of fresh ingredients, but at the same time, we build a lot of flavor using some of those canned ingredients, specifically tomatoes and tomato product, to create kind of an umami base to a lot of the way we cook. It's super important.
I love it. And I don't think we brought up umami yet. That's a good reminder. Marco, how about yourself?
Yeah, I'm a chef from Sacramento, born and raised. Worked all over the world, but always find myself back in my hometown. I've opened up and reopened a few restaurants here in town. I think probably 2 to 3 canned products in the restaurant. Some things you can't beat, the quality and consistency. So, yeah.
That's great. And Patrick, what about yourself?
I think like Brad, we're in the 4 to 6, certainly anchovies and crab during the winter in cans, but I think that tomatoes are the base, right? Like Brad said, offer flavor in the bottom to support other dishes, and occasionally during the winter to provide a real nice piece of summer, a reminder of what seasonal summer fruit is. Along with my wife Bobbin and I run Mulvaney's Building and Loan, and along with Brad helped found and continue to push forward Family Meal Sacramento, which feeds hungry kids and seniors throughout the Sacramento Valley.
Great. And then Patricio, if you could introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Patricio Wise. I'm chef owner at NixTaco Mexican Kitchen in Roseville. We do everything from scratch, but again, pretty much like like everybody was saying, I mean, there's seasonality issues, and as a Mexican restaurant, we do use a lot of tomatoes and tomatillos. Tomatoes are not good in the winter, so it really helps when you can get them great in a can. We definitely use canned tomatoes for our red sauces to develop umami flavors in that, to make bases for other stuff like sofrito for our rice and whatnot. And we have 2 other items which are used for dessert: condensed milk and evaporated milk. But that's pretty much it. Everything else, we try and get fresh ingredients. That, I mean, yeah, 2 or 3 items.
Well, and Patricio was just in an article naming him the best tacos in Northern California, at least. I think it was kind of vague beyond, but they're saying, you know, it's not, you'd think like Bay Area, but you gotta come up to Roseville for the best tacos. And I would even add that you touched on it. My favorite thing is all your salsas. And I love that and I'm going to get to this question, but one of my favorite things when I was there recently, I used to love your salsa bar. And I know that because of COVID, that's kind of frowned upon these days. And so now when you sit down at your table, you're presented with a little tray that has all the different kinds of salsas. And I think I went through 3 different of those trays because I just want all the sauces. But I'm a big fan. Well, thank you guys. Again, I'm just excited to have you guys here. I was going to go through and just ask you guys a couple questions. Brad, to start with you, I know you touched on it a little bit, but obviously this has been a pretty terrible time all around the board for everyone. But restaurants obviously took a huge hit with the lockdown, with the opening and the closings and everything else that went on. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of how that affected your restaurant, and then what you guys did as a result of it?
Sure. I think for us, my partner and I, Clay, my partner Clay and I, we're owners of a small business, and I know that the 2 of these guys on this panel also own their businesses. So when the pandemic hit, this wave of uncertainty and this wave of fear was coming our way. We had our staff members looking to us to really, lead here and kind of provide a little bit of reassurance that they were gonna, figure out how to get paid and figure out how to live their lives. And so, the Monday after the lockdown, a group of us, Patrick included, Patricio didn't make the meeting, but it was involved early on, and a group of people from the Sacramento Unified School District and the hospital systems. And we got into a room together and we decided that we were not going to, hide from this, and we weren't gonna not, let our businesses, or we weren't gonna let our businesses fail. So we came up with an idea that we called Family Meal Sacramento, which was a way to just put chefs to work. At the end of the day, when we started this, it was about keeping our staff working. We had groups of people in small restaurants that could be socially distant, opposed to like large commissaries with large groups of people. So we had these micro commissaries, and we decided to put that to work and develop a way of allowing small restaurants or independent restaurants to feed, large swaths of people, whether it was the elderly, whether it was school children, whether it was just people who needed to know where their next meal came from, quarantined people. We just kind of found as many places to take food as we could. And that, really helped keep our staffs employed and working through this pandemic. Also kept, the supply chain moving. I know we received quite a bit of canned not just canned tomatoes, but canned goods in general. Processed, like lamb vindaloo, 6,000 pounds of lamb vindaloo from Superior Farms. That we all just it was also our chance to meet up at the B&L every week and kind of check in with each other while we were picking up our allotments of whatever we were able to procure. because we were trying to feed, you know, 4 meals for $20, and that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes, but it really kept us going. And at the volume we were able to produce, I think it kept a lot of people, you know, with food in their bellies too. It was something that we're very proud of, you know, and that program, you know, was eventually picked up by the city of Sacramento to feed the elderly in their SHRA communities. Patricio was able to kind of get something going in Placer County. And then that program ended up turning into what was called the Great Plates Delivered program. The governor came by Patrick's place and saw what we were doing, and we were able to kind of get this Great Plates program off the ground, which, you know, ended up feeding people statewide, you know, in the tens of millions at the end of the day. So it was something that kept us going, but also has since turned into something that's become, you know, a real way for restaurants to help address food insecurity, help address, you know, connecting the local agriculture community with a local food community that really needs the education of, you know, not eating at restaurants that aren't socially conscious of what they're serving, right? Like, we're helping connect the ag community with less fortunate people who are food insecure. They're now eating better meals and things like that because we're trying to help, you know, provide those things. And I know, you know, for the way that the future looks for our program, it's really, I think it's really bright. You know, I think a lot of the municipalities around, not just, you know, Sacramento, but Patrick and I have had conversations with cities and municipalities all over the country. And just trying to figure out how, you know, as a struggling restaurant community comes back or tries to operate within a pandemic, you know, it's important that we find other revenue streams, and we find, you know, other ways to connect to our community too. While we have our guests in our dining rooms drinking fancy wine and eating our really creative food every night, we love to see them, and we're happy that they're back. But I also think that we found something in the pandemic in Family Meal that also scratched an itch that a lot of us restaurateurs have, and that's just providing good food to people who are hungry. And I think that, you know, thanks to obviously everybody who helped us through that time, you know, and I'm not kidding, you know, like, there was my daughter would have loved the fort she could have built with the stacks of pallets of tomatoes and chickpeas and beans and all the things that showed up, you know, in April, May, and June of 2020. It was really, really a crazy time.
Well, and I remember Andy Russick, who's here, and he called me at one point and asked, what can I do? And he ended up driving his truck up with a pallet full of tomatoes and I think other canned foods too. But I loved, you know, just hanging out at the B&L and seeing those trucks come in and people dropping off, you know, mountains of rice or whatever they could contribute. And I just think that, you know, that the way that you guys develop that, where it's like, not only are you keeping your employees working and not having to just stay home, but you're keeping your businesses afloat and you're doing something good. I love that model. And I hope to see, like you said, like that this could roll out into other cities. Well, now it's in California, but hopefully across the nation.
Well, it's a true testament to like our restaurant community here in Sacramento. You know, just the fact that we were able to work together to do something like this, and we were able to get together at the B&L and share product as it came in. You know, I think that's you know, was a rare thing prior to the pandemic in places other than Sacramento, and I hope that it's grown since.
Yeah, no, that's great. We lost Patricio. Well, thank you. And then Marco, I have a question for you. Now your experiences. So I went and I had your pizza, and I was blown away. You know, and we've talked about it quite a bit. And the thing that got me really excited was that I know on your Instagram you're really active and you take these beautiful pictures. And at one point you highlighted the canned tomatoes that you use, which are grown in California. And I thought it was interesting. I like was reading through your comments, to see if there was any backlash or anything. But one of the things that we talk about all the time is that, when you do talk about these, higher end, quality ingredients and everything, a lot of times if people have already overcome the hurdle of like, oh yeah, no, I know I should use canned foods for this. But then they'll say like, oh, but I have to buy these really expensive imported Italian tomatoes. And, and that drives me crazy. But again, my opinion is probably a little bit biased. And so that's why I really loved seeing that from you. And I was hoping maybe you could talk a little bit about, your experience of, working in these, maybe tell us a little bit about the restaurants you've worked in and the experience you've had with those ingredients. But then what brought you when you were creating your own, pizzas and you wanted to find the best ingredients, what is it that made you decide to use California tomatoes?
Well, it's all about sourcing. I'm sure all these chefs can attest to that. I grew up with an Italian mother, an immigrant from Italy, and she always told me canned tomatoes are superior in flavor and quality and consistency. And that's something very huge at the restaurants is if we're trying to make our own, you have a short period in the season, it's not going to be the same quality. I've worked at the #1 and #3 best pizzeria in the world. Grew up on my family's food and wine tours of Italy. Spent a lot of time traveling and working in Italy, and it is very much so that tradition of if you want to make a traditional Neapolitan style pizza, you have to use this type of product from this region only, otherwise it's not authentic. And that kind of blew my mind when learning about what La Cucina Italiana was. It's about sourcing the best local quality product you can get. For me, I went through this. I feel like California is having its tomato renaissance. It reminds me of like the Napa Valley in the 1970s with the wine and the French saying, oh, there's no good wine in Napa and in California, they can't do it. But I was sitting there, I had that bottle shock moment in my restaurant in the Bay Area before the pandemic, trying to source. I asked all my vendors, give me all of your tomatoes. I want to taste them side by side. And we popped open about 35 cans of tomatoes. I had my 2 sous chefs from Italy. I had my pizzaiolo from Italy. I had my general manager from Italy. They're all pointing at labels and they're saying, oh, this one's going to be the best. Oh, this one's all the best ones use, all the best pizzaiolos use this can of tomatoes. And so we taste them side by side. And it was shocking to see the 3 winners were the California tomatoes. And they were shocked too. And you could tell from the quality, the water content, the flavor, whatever we're doing here is rivaling some of the best imported tomatoes. And, it's also about carbon footprint, sustainability, and to see our purveyors and our producers and these farmers working, and that's working as hard as us, as chefs do, to create that product and make it so I can open that can, I can feel very comfortable that I know where it's coming from. And that's what the farm to fork movement is all about, knowing where your ingredients come from and who's cooking them and who's producing them. So it was shocking to see the reaction from all these Italians that we actually have some of the better tasting tomatoes. So you can only do that when you side by side comparison.
That's amazing. I want to do that bottle shock that you talked about. And I think it's really interesting too. I forget what the term was, but that almost that style of Italian cooking would to do that in America, you would use American ingredients because that's what they encourage you. Like they want you to use whatever is the best local ingredient. So ironically, cooking Italian in America should actually be using American ingredients and the quality, or the best quality you could get, as local as you can. Interesting. Well, that's great. Well, and Patricio, I wanted to talk to you. I see you have a giant tomato canning facility there behind you. Are you? What are these machines that you have behind you? I wanted to hear about what did you guys do during the lockdown, and how are you seeing some of the effects moving forward that you guys are gonna take with you?
So as you already heard through Brad, the Monday after lockdown, I got a call from him and said, "Hey, we're planning this. Are you in?" I'm like, "Yeah." And I was able to be part of the first restaurants to participate in the first round of funding for Family Meal, what was called Family Meal Sacramento. At some point, the funding was for Sacramento restaurants, so we were cut off. And that's okay. I started moving with the city of Roseville and Placer County, and we were able to get going a funding round as well to establish the same program for Placer County. And that kept us going for the first couple of months. I mean, I share the same sentiments as Brad as to how it was amazing just to see all these great people in our community just huddle up and get to work. I was able to keep all of my staff employed. At the same time, it was very easy for us to pivot into a curbside system because we already had online ordering available. I just had to retweak the menu a little bit and get tons and tons of packaging because now everything was going to be to go. But we had that going day two. So at least we kept the restaurant operations going as well, even though the dining room remained closed for the whole lot of 18 months up until 3 weeks ago. I chose to not reopen and close, reopen and close, reopen and close. We just couldn't afford to do it. I didn't think it was worth it for us at the time. I'm glad we didn't because the time it would have taken us to reopen, we'd be shut down again within a week. So a dining room is too small to maintain social distancing, and it really didn't work. And I didn't really think it was neither worth it nor responsible. So we kept the dining room closed. At the same time, just prior to the pandemic in November 2019, I had started this distillery project that I'd been interested in for some time. The space next to the restaurant became available, which is where I'm sitting right now. And we acquired it and we got our permits or our plans approved on November 2019. We started demo. Then the holidays hit, we were a little bit slow. And the pandemic hit and it just put everything at a standstill. There was no contractors willing to come out. The whole supply chain was completely stopped. So it delayed everything, but it was kind of good for us because it allowed us to build at a pace that we could afford to build as opposed to get a bunch of lump invoices immediately with no revenue. That would have been, I mean, the project might not have been born had that been the case. So I'm happy that it turned out the way it did. It's not the best case scenario, but it's also not the worst. And we got our license as a craft distiller approved by ABC 2.5 weeks ago. And it's very convenient for the restaurant because we can use the restaurant as our tasting room for our spirits that we produce in-house. And in doing so, we get full liquor privileges, just like the license type 47, without actually having to purchase one of those, which are very expensive in the secondary market in this census trade. So at this point, we're reopening. As you mentioned, we had a really good write-up yesterday, and it's been really good for us. I'm very happy at the situation, the position where we're at now. It's a challenge, as you all know. I'm sure we all share the same sentiment. Hiring is problematic right now, and it will continue to be until there's no more benefits for unemployment, unfortunately. And hopefully the situation can resolve soon, and people want to work again. And we can get back on our feet and start operating like a regular restaurant.
And what are the some of the changes? Like, I mentioned the salsa, like that's a small thing, but I'd be curious, like in general, like, do you guys like some of the changes, like ordering from your phone, things like that? I mean, are any of those kind of, or like, I know you guys all have created some pretty impressive to-go options, that, again, forced to kind of because of what was going on, but like, are any of those sort of things you guys are excited about continuing on, or are you happy to, go back to the way things used to be?
Well, I'm really happy that we have the tools nowadays, the infrastructure to be able to be open with almost no staff in front of the house, with systems in place like ordering from your phone. It's convenient, but it's not hospitality. I mean, you go out to a restaurant and you expect to talk to somebody and chat about the food that you're going to be served and talk about the specials and how much thought the chef put into it, and blah blah blah, and all this. And the guests are not getting that, and it kills me. Like, it really does. But we can't. I mean, we don't have the staff to provide that service at the churning rate that this business model requires to survive. I mean, our price point, we can't really limit people and just do that, because then we won't have the revenue level to be able to sustain business. The salsa bar, well, it was very convenient for people to just serve themselves. They were very happy about the existence of the salsa bar. I personally never liked it, but it was what people wanted. So again, in being hospitable and trying to please people, we provided it. It turned out to be convenient for us because all we had to do was keep it stocked and people were happy about it. The solution we came up with, I think it's great. Most people are okay with it. There's always a guy that wants more chips, that wants more of this salsa. And again, having that staff limitation is really, can you hear me?
No, sorry, it was me. I was the one that wanted more chips and salsa. Sorry.
Oh.
But yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, but I mean, we can bring them to your table, but unfortunately, because of health department guidelines and whatnot, we can have serve yourself kind of stations, which at this point, with even less staff than we had before, I would love to have.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. I mean, we're making things work with the systems and restrictions we have in place. I am very happy that these systems exist these days, and that it's very easy to code. Our menus already programmed in a way that is very easy to order. Most of our regulars were already used to online ordering from their phone, and that interface, that user interface didn't really change for them. So I'm happy about that. I just hate the fact that we can't provide the hospitality that we want to.
Yeah, well, and I think, you know, like you touched on, I think the hiring, staffing issues that everybody's facing right now, everybody's kind of going through it. I think it's a great reminder to everybody listening too, of just like how important it is to get out and support your local restaurants, however you feel comfortable, you know, through all these ups and downs we're all having, you know, depending on where you live, of whether you can go in or do takeout, or even getting gift certificates right now. I mean, these are the kind of, you know, family restaurants that you're supporting. Patrick Mulvaney, I wanted to ask you a question, and this is actually a question that I asked you, I think the first day I met you, and it was about canned foods. And
Can you marry my daughter?
Yeah, that came a little bit later. But this actually did help to make sure that this was going to work out. And it was that I wanted to make sure that you weren't anti-canned food. And again, this is why I think that these talks are so great, is because I also was a little bit hesitant. Like when you have, you know, chefs of, you know, all of your caliber that are known for fresh, local, you know, all the great things for all the great foods you guys do, and like new menus every day and everything. I was a little bit nervous that you were going to say like, oh, we don't use canned foods here. And so as soon as I brought that up, you know, right away you were, you know, very, very open. And I thought that helped lead all of our relationships forward. But I wanted to ask you about that. I mean, because like I said, I think sometimes people think that farm to fork, and I should say, I mean, you really were one of the pioneers back, you know, I don't know, was it 15 years ago when Sacramento kind of planted a flag and said, hey, we're going to be the farm to fork capital of America, and really raising the awareness of what does farm to fork mean. So that's where I just think it's really interesting to hear from you. How is it that you think, you know, canned food fits in? I guess you guys have touched on this a little bit already, but how do you see canned food fitting in with farm to fork? Are they mutually exclusive, or are they a part of the whole farm to fork movement?
So when I moved here years ago, I came for graduate school, and it was the fall, and the highways around UC Davis and the streets were littered with what we called road pizza, because at the time everyone was taking out the tomatoes for canning. And so I found out then that whatever large percentage of tomatoes that were processed in the United States came from here in California, especially around Sacramento. And so farm to fork focuses on the seasonal and the local, and tries to sometimes get away from what are your labels? Are you organic? Are you whatever it is that you're using? And look for sustainability, that people are good to the earth. But more important, I think at the end of the day, it's face recognition. You know, do you know the farmers? Can you see where the product is grown? And that's something that we see here every day. And being able then to use those products, focusing on seasonality, to have seasonality come in a can, kind of putting lightning in a jar and saving it for later is super important. And then as a tall guy, to be able to use the number 10 cans to lift up tables when I have to slice things has been really key. And also to put under my iPad now to raise it up so you can see my face straight on.
Well, they have multiple functions. No, I think that's great. Well, we're wrapping up. We're at the 30-minute mark. I just want to say thank you again. I mean, you know, I know a lot of you guys were just working on the big Tower Bridge dinner, and you guys all have many projects going on. So this means a lot that you guys take the time to talk about this and share your expertise. In just kind of a lightning round, I think we might have lost Patricio. If you guys don't mind just sharing, if you go home and you're cooking a meal for yourself, or you have guests coming over and you want to impress them, what is your favorite go-to recipe that features canned tomatoes? Or we can throw in canned peaches too. I don't know as much about them, but they're also good.
I could share, I could share a funny story.
Okay.
In 2018, when we were doing the Tower Bridge dinner, Jeremiah Tower expressed to me how his favorite all-time dessert is that of canned peaches and cottage cheese.
Really?
Which I thought was interesting and something that he grew up on. As far as I go, you know, I think that having a 4-year-old daughter, canned tomatoes and whatever kind of funny shaped noodle I can find comes in handy most days of the week.
Yeah.
So definitely the simple pasta.
You know,
And then Brad, we'll take that to the next step, because on Monday we used our granddaughter Clover to roll out pasta and have that with our fresh tomato sauce, right? Used with canned tomatoes in the back. And I never knew that you could have noodles that were 1/4 of an inch thick, but they actually turned out pretty well.
they're like sausages, but it was.
But then I just want to say to the dietitians that it's important, right? We think about, as chefs, we're always trying to feed people in ways that make them happy, comfortable, and full. Brad, with the Family Meal Sacramento, we've been doing the same thing, trying to connect with people to give them food. And while you can get food out of a box, that idea that you're taking something, but that we were handing people meals, that human touch was very important. And so you guys as dietitians are in some ways doing the same thing, taking food that's just off a shelf or out of a book or has no connection and making it personal and making it real. And that kind of connection is what's going to help make people eat better in the future. So thank you for what you guys do.
Great. Marco, what's your go-to quick tomato recipe?
Well, I would say it's more of a food memory. Growing up with an Italian mother, every 2 weeks she'd make the sugo, you know, the meat sauce for the week, for the month, you know, or every 2 weeks basically. And that smell would come up to the second story of the house, and you knew she was making it. And she would never let us steal a little bit before it was ready, but we would always sneak around her and go and grab some. And one time I caught my dad doing it, and we locked eyes because we knew she would be furious with us. So it's going to be the traditional Tuscan style sugo with the meat sauce and some fresh pappardelle noodles. Just simple, beautiful, silky smooth.
Now, sugo, so is that from Philadelphia, Jersey? Is that where they say sugo?
No, so the Northern Italians call it sugo.
Okay.
They do refer to it as the salsa in some of the regions, or you can just go straight for the bolognese. But we call it, that's like what your mom makes, is the sugo or the salsa.
I feel like on the East Coast, it's regional that they debate this all the time. Is it gravy? Is it sauce? Is it sugo?
The gravy. That's Southern Italian for sure on the East Coast.
Okay. Well, great. Well, I want to let you guys go. I feel like you guys have been so generous with your time. Any closing thoughts? I haven't seen if we've had any questions come through. If you guys have any questions, if you guys want to reach out to any of these guys individually, I'm sure that we can connect you guys. I saw something come through, a question about food service that I know we can connect you with these guys if you have a question about how to either get involved with supporting Family Meal. I think on the website or on Attendify, they have links to where you can connect with each of these chefs. But I just want to say thank you guys. I really appreciate it. I love what you guys do and the food you make, and appreciate you guys sharing that with the audience today.
Thank you.
Our pleasure.
Thank you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thanks.
All right, we'll talk to you guys later.